Yeah, very warm welcome to our webinar today, our Finovate webinar. First of all, I want to say thank you to Finovate for facilitating this webinar. This webinar is hosted by equensWorldline, Atos, and Intercope, our strategic partner. We will introduce them in a couple of minutes. So what we want to do today is to answer the question, what's next for top-tier banks and financial messaging? So, yeah, we have around about 45 minutes for the presentation. We will give you the chance to put questions into the chat box during the session, and at the end we will have a Q&A where we try to answer most of or all of the questions or most of them, and if there is not enough time, so we will definitely get back to everybody and with an answer on your dedicated question. So, who are the hosts of today's session? Julius Petkovic, the head of Swift messaging at equensWorldline. Julius, some introduction about yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon or good morning to you, Julius Petkovic. I'm responsible for the Swift messaging platform based in Brussels, providing Swift and transactional services, messaging services to clients around the world, but predominantly across Europe.
Yeah, and we have Dara Kirby here from our strategic partner Intercope. Dara, well, welcome to you as well, and thank you. Give us some words about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon. My name is Dara Kirby. I work for Intercope, a German software engineering company, and we've been in the messaging business for 35 years now, and in the Swift business for probably almost 20 years now. So I'll be discussing the product that's at the basis of this offering further in the presentation.
Yeah, my name is Olaf Badstübner. I'm from the Atos Group side. I will explain. So Atos is a big IT giant, and I'm being the moderator and by the same time also the lead of this strategic initiative for the next generation in financial messaging. So whom are you listening to? So equensWorldline, who's that? So just some facts and figures, but that shouldn't be a company presentation for the moment. It's just that you really get a little bit a sense of equensWorldline. So equensWorldline is a subsidiary and own legal entity of the Atos Group, the Atos company. Atos is a big IT company with 100,000 employees globally. We serve customers in 72 countries. We have around 100,000 employees, 13 billion in revenues, and equensWorldline is our very specialized entity focusing on transactional-based business. So transactional business means payment business. So for that, and as you can see, equensWorldline is and Worldline is in Europe. #1 payment service provider. So we have put here some facts and figures in, also in comparison to the other competitors here in the market. So, and just recently we announced by the beginning of the year that we also acquired 6 payment services, or we are about to acquire 6 payment services in Switzerland that will come on top of the Worldline revenue you see here in the diagram. So just some other figures. So yeah, we process with equensWorldline around about 10 billion payment transfers per year. We service around about 100 million cards for our customers. We have 2.5 billion in ATM transactions, also that kind of business we service, and around about 250 plus banking clients. So means equensWorldline is in the business in payments. They know exactly what that means, and for that reason, highly appreciated to have that session today jointly with equensWorldline and Intercope on Swift messaging, financial messaging. So my last slide will be setting the scene a little bit around what are the key challenges we see at the moment in the market. So when we have the conversations with the various banks, we realize there is one key driver. This is increasing cost side of operating the SWIFT messaging, financial messaging. This is we call this now a critical commodity. So it's very critical to the bank because it connects the bank to the industry backbone to transfer all kind of payments, securities, and whatever. So it's very critical. But at the same time, it's commodity already, yeah, because there's no differentiator to bank. They have to do that. So, and now with the SWIFT CSP program, the customer security program, what all the banks or all the connected parties to SWIFT have to comply with until the end of the year. So new requirements increasing the pressure on the cost side. But that will remain, yeah. So that will lead to always recertification, annual recertification audits. But also new standards are coming in, like the instant payment requirements, but also is a requirement for 24/7. Instant credit transfer is the next, or ECB tips in 2018. So all of that brings really pressure at the moment to the banks, and we see that in all the discussions we have. So, but by the same time, and that brings me to the lower right side, is most, or not most, yeah, or let's say most of the banks, they still deal with legacy platforms on the back-end side. So it's really sometimes we are facing COBOL systems on mainframe or something like that, and this is of course difficult to maintain over the years. So there is a end-of-life software like COBOL or others. We see siloed channels and processes which are not harmonized yet. So that comes from all the years. So we have a backup spaghetti junctions, and with that, of course, scalability limitations. So, and last but not least, that comes in then to an operational risk. So that banks are suffering really in key resources. So they are feeling not comfortable looking into midterm that they have an aging staff not supporting anymore the COBOL environment and so on, but also dedicated SWIFTs or people with dedicated SWIFT skills are very, very rare on the market at the moment. So all of that is what we see at the moment is really bringing a lot of pressure, and with that next generation financial messaging, we see that we have an answer for that. And here I hand over now to Julius to introduce the next generation financial messaging and how this can help banks.
Okay, thanks Olaf. So as a payment services provider, we're definitely seeing, as Olaf mentioned, a step change in terms of interest for our SWIFT managed services in the market. All really driven by the issues just outlined by Olaf. So the increasing cost and complexity of risk of running your own SWIFT connection and service, given the changes to regulations and the overall drive to better and cheaper payments, is really now at the forefront of many very large banks. We call them tier one banks, so they're really the top banks, where until only a few years ago, they probably would not have been in the market for a managed service solution around SWIFT or around messaging. It was something that they really thought was core to their skill set, to their competitiveness and differentiation. But now we're really seeing that, as Olaf was indicating, that the drivers in the market are really pushing banks to reconsider this position. So traditionally, service bureaus, which is essentially what a third party providing SWIFT connectivity to banks or corporates is. Service bureaus ran SWIFT connectivity basically for banking groups or for medium financial institutions or corporates that didn't have the scale or expertise in-house, and so look for a third party to do it for them. Now we're seeing that tier one banks, the largest banks, are really starting to approach the market, and particularly us, to see how we can really remove some of these barriers for them. And Swift is definitely on the table to be outsourced and to be managed. But with this sort of new level or scale comes also the need to deliver solutions and services that match these requirements of these top banks, which frankly in the market for service bureaus was non-existent. We think that now, given our track record, our expertise within the group, all the assets and resources that we have, that we actually now have a very compelling offer now on the market. So what have we done? We've actually started from the bottom up, and we've designed and invested very heavily in a completely new infrastructure and solution that's tailor-made to the needs of the very largest financial institutions. The other good side of this is, of course, that our other customers, smaller customers, potentially will also be able to benefit from the same solution. But this is really a first in the market. And this is really also at a time when we're seeing that there is a consolidation in the numbers of service providers in the market, mainly because they simply can't keep up with the level of investments needed or cannot differentiate themselves sufficiently. So the solution that we've designed and have implemented is we're calling Next Generation Financial Messaging, and this is still based on the Swift Service Bureau model, which is, as I said, a requirement for any third party looking to manage Swift for clients. It draws on our 25 years of experience providing Swift connectivity, but also as a regulated payment services provider, we simply have the experience and scale, as Olaf mentioned, the number one service provider, payment services provider in Europe, to handle all Swift and similar sort of related requests, whether they're compliancy or investments in solutions, which frankly just become heavier and heavier and more complex and therefore costlier to implement. Focusing just on the regulatory part, if we can just take that away from our clients, this is already just a major cost saving in itself. And we can speak really from experience because of course we have to ensure compliancy as a service provider ourselves. In addition, providing an operational service model that guarantees availability, full redundancy, tested disaster recovery facilities, etc., all designed to meet the very demanding expectations of the top banks. It's not just a major cost saving for banks, but also reduces their operational risks. So, given our or Equans Worldline's core service offerings, which really require this top level of operational capability, we can deliver these services to these banks and provide them really with peace of mind. As we scale up, we can also deliver solutions and services at a cost point which financial institutions themselves, frankly, cannot match. This is a simple sort of scale effect, and it also means that we'll be able to support new services as they come online, such as instant payments, instant messaging, new protocols, new channels, and we, from the very beginning, wanted to ensure that this new platform would be able to offer that flexibility and that scalability. If we also factor in the removal of legacy applications, and I'll touch on that a little bit later on, basically the business case becomes even more compelling. And to achieve all of this, we leverage not just our own expertise and assets and resources, but we also decided to build a solution using Intercope's Box messaging hub as really the platform for this strategy because of its multi-tenant, multi-channel and support literally out of the box. This really is an application which really combines very strongly with our core offering, and Dara will go into more detail on that later on in the presentation. So to show that this isn't just a slideware presentation, I'd like just to focus a little bit about our first real top-tier bank success, Commerzbank, which you may or may not have heard about in the market. This was something that we are very proud to have announced earlier in the year, that Commerzbank, really a top-tier SWIFT user, decided to outsource all of its payments processing, including SWIFT, to Equans Worldline. And we're very confident that this is the first of hopefully many other Tier 1 banks, and given the expressions of interest that we're now dealing with, I think that this really is the beginning of something really promising. And in addition, what we really found here was that all the points that Olaf was describing before, all the pain points, were really also very prevalent with Commerzbank. So we were able to really road test our solution with Commerzbank, and based on the solution design and the project delivery, we're very confident that we actually have a solution which is not just fit for purpose, but really something which can offer a solution for banks such as Commerzbank well into the future. The other areas really where Commerzbank had some strong issues or concerns were also around the skills and SWIFT expertise, and they realized that this could be an issue for them down the road, and that was actually another deciding factor for them, that they would like to get the assurance that we can deliver service managed by experts on a brand new platform at a lower cost point. In addition, we solved, of course, Commerzbank's CSP compliance concerns, which were very at the top of their minds, and really was a driver for them to start considering how they're going to actually overcome these requirements. And some of their requirements around the CSP really did involve having some significant new investments. So they were faced with really dilemmas on multiple fronts: compliancy costs, platform run costs, and working together, we've been able to show that we can and have reduced their operating costs significantly. And as you can imagine, the volumes and scale of Commerzbank were frankly off the charts as far as normal service bureau operations are concerned. And had we not have had this new solution in place, it's quite clear that Commerzbank would not even have considered to outsource to us. So if I move to the next slide. So if we drill down now a little bit further into our actual offering, if we look really at the core components of the offer and what differentiates us from previous solutions and our existing or previous offer and the market more generally. So in addition to the core platform, which I'll go into even more detail in the next slide, our solution is basically built around the core expertise and our 25-year track record providing SWIFT services around the globe, mainly in Europe, but still some clients across the world, with the requisite internal skills and experience that you need simply to be able to provide these services. In addition, and because we are part of the group and part of Equans Worldline, we're able also to draw on multiple pools of talent in operation, solution design, project management, network, all these things which become an absolute requirement if you're going to be bringing on banks the likes of Commerzbank. We essentially have everything that we need in-house, even down to our own data centers, which are managed and owned by us. So another factor really behind this sort of thinking and this strategy was, okay, we've for years now been maintaining our service bureau to the highest levels of compliance around SWIFT. So previously we were a premium level accredited service bureau, and prior to that a best practice accredited service bureau. So we were used to operating at the highest levels of availability and all the different SWIFT requirements. It wasn't a far stretch then for us to move to the new CSP requirements. So we were really well placed to take advantage of our previous investments too. So these investments are definitely paying off. So operating is one thing. Also having the right market solutions available is also a key to securing the relations and the business of top-tier banks, because of course they need to offer the full scope of services, current as well as planned or future solutions. And to that end, we work very closely with SWIFT to ensure that we have can provide our clients with all the cutting-edge solutions such as instant payments, instant messaging. And within Equans Worldline, we're utterly convinced that the world is becoming increasingly real-time, and that essentially real-time will become the new norm. And this was also another driver and reason why we were able to make extensive investments, such as to the move to fully active environments, which are not at all negligible investments. SWIFT compliance is one part. As a company, we're also scrutinized by a variety of other public bodies, including national banks, payment schemes. We are also a large payment card acquirer and issuer, so we're used to making sure that we're compliant with schemes such as PCI and even, of course, for GDPR. So all these elements bring additional guarantees and service benefits for our clients. Last of all, but certainly not least, security. Olaf mentioned that we are currently handling billions of critical payments annually. And to do that, of course, you need the infrastructure, the operating model, and also the mindset really to put security at the forefront of everything you do. And this is really the heart of our services, of our sort of ethos as a fully managed service operation. Again, now drilling down, if we look at the topology of the actual platform, it probably look quite familiar with as a sort of traditional service bureau setup, but I think that's really where the analogy stops. At the top, we have clients which have their own instances of Swift messaging, and of course fully segregated environments, where only certain components such as the Swift gateways or connectivity can be shared. In the green area, we have the full Swift certified zone, where Interco Box, for example, and core secure Swift applications are residing and are maintained and operated by the Swift teams. This is, by the way, the core of the sort of the CSP environment or the CSP program, or the Swift footprint, as Swift calls it. From there, going down, clients can access via the same interface different messaging networks depending on their current or future messaging and business requirements. And these, of course, provide additional reachability to correspondence, whether banks, corporates, or market infrastructures. The benefits really of this setup is that we really address all the maintenance operations and legacy as a fully managed service offering, including business processes. We handle all updates, patches, and investments needed to operate and guarantee compliance, security, etc. But as much as possible, we try to share different components so that we can deliver and continue to deliver the major economies of scale, but without, of course, compromising flexibility on solutions or services. Now, I mentioned a few moments back about the legacy applications, and Olaf talked about that too in his introduction. This is another real key to our offering, and it's the age-old issue of back-office complexity. The bigger the bank, basically, the greater the back-office complexity, and the more difficult it is to actually interconnect these flows. And it often is a reason why banks are really hesitant about considering to outsource, because it doesn't really address some of their core concerns, which can often be simply around the legacy applications and back office connectivity. And talking to many well-known banks, proving that we can interconnect their back office is a real requirement. So our solution is, where relevant, and it's not always required, is to install a light message concentrator gateway adapter between firewalls in a secure zone on the customer's premises. This adapter is configured based on workflows and set up to support all the requisite protocols so that interconnectivity is centralized via the gateway adapter to the box connection. Otherwise, all the endpoints using different protocols will need to be connected separately, and of course that is just a huge undertaking in itself. And to give you some degree of scale, we're talking, we know from clients that can have many thousands of endpoints that all need to be interconnected. So this message concentrator gateway adapter is really an important part of our toolkit to solving this complexity in back offices. The adapter itself is set up, monitored, and maintained by Equans Worldline together with Intercope. And the setup is pushed by us from the Swift zone on the right-hand side to the local gateway adapter, so that maintenance is always up to date and we are as minimally intrusive for our clients as possible. All this is achieved working closely with a dedicated project team so that we can essentially quickly assess how best to tailor our solution to the needs of the client and, as always, demonstrate a very compelling business case. So the secure connectivity to the service bureau is also assured by the MQ connection. And looking at the top of the screen, you see that users connect in a normal way using the secure tokens over a secure Citrix connection. And again, Equans Worldline is basically managing all aspects of this connection. So anything in blue here is really the responsibility of Equans Worldline together with our partner Intercope. And using this approach, banks essentially do not need any longer to solve some of their back office legacy application integration issues before being able to benefit from a fully managed Swift offering. So this again is something very compelling and frankly new, particularly for large tier 1 customers in the market. And I'll now hand over to Dara to go into more detail on the underlying application, which is the Intercope Box messaging hub.
Yeah, thanks, Julius. So as mentioned at the start of the call, Intercope, we are a software engineering company based in Hamburg in Germany. Been providing high-end, high-performance and high-availability messaging systems for, as I mentioned earlier, 35 years within the financial services and banking industry. And so as a result of that background, we've evolved into a provider of what's called our Box messaging hub. Now, Box stands for Back Office Exchange. And this solution has been deployed, or is deployed, at a number of customers around the world, tier 1 service bureaus, and that's in North America, in Europe, and in Asia Pacific. So we've quite a lot of experience in this area. Its primarily function is as a Swift hub, Swift CBT, if you like. And how we got into this business is really, I suppose, we specialize in becoming the replacement project experts, whereby we've adopted, replaced, as Olaf mentioned earlier, COBOL-based legacy systems, things like Merva, and more recently WBIFN from IBM, and also and also Mint as well, so legacy-based systems, but also more recently where there are platforms that maybe aren't fit for purpose in terms of performance or high availability, or, as Julius has touched on earlier, the ability to be compliant to CSP within time. So we've quite a bit of experience, quite a lot of experience working with large banks. We have a really interesting and nice user community who we work together with. And we're very excited now about this partnership because it gives us this deployment option that we haven't had previously, the ability to have the solution outsourced. It gives another deployment option, another platform option for customers with our solution. So to that point, I just wanted to touch on a number of the key aspects of the solution just so you understand its capability. So it's based on a 3-tier architecture, which is quite hard for an Irish person to say, but THs and TRs. But it's with a database, data layer, a messaging service, and a presentation layer. So, and within that, one of the things we're very, very proud of, I guess, is our capability to be able to run the solution in whatever the customer's infrastructure or choice is, whether that be operating system or database or a presentation layer. So we work with Oracle, with IBM, and on the various platforms within that, as well as all the databases. And it's something we've spent a lot of time working on. One of the key parts of the solution, I guess, which has been touched on really, is the security. I mean, we have a security team here in Intercope, and SWIFT certifications and the customer security program have been huge things for us in the last few years. It's been something we've practiced at normal to be, highly secure because we understand the importance or the business criticality of the solutions that we provide. But the CSP program has really, has allowed us to show the full value of this solution and how we were able to self-attest as a vendor and then also customer certify with Commerzbank and our other customers as one of the first vendors to do so, which was quite exciting and quite a coup for us. As touched on earlier by Julius and Olaf, this is a multi-tenant solution, so it runs at a number of service bureaus today, but also within an entity, it allows you to have, various different banks or subgroups or BICs within, all running on the one platform. And it's a single platform, and it's highly optimized. There's performance optimization there for high throughput at a low footprint. And this becomes very important when we deal with the likes of Commerzbank, as Julius mentioned, high volume. And also as we look to, what's happening now in the market, the idea of instant and immediate payments, not just the speed, but also the latency through the platform as well. And our solution is very highly optimized, and it's something we spend quite a bit of time with customers to get to that place. As well as other aspects, I guess one key point, and I'll touch on a little bit more in the next one, is our ability to do different formats. So within SWIFT, obviously you have the ISO 15022 and the previous ISO to that within the FIN, but also you have the ISO 20022, the XML based for Interact and for FileAct for things like SEPA, for example. We run these through a coexistence on the platform. So the platform can do all of these SWIFT formats natively, as well as being, like it's called, back office exchange, having the ability to deal in proprietary formats and indeed shield the back office from the SWIFT changes that happen on an annual basis. And this is one of the key aspects of this solution. Not just the connectivity to the network, but also the ability to shield back office systems. And within that, we have a workflow and we have routing tables, and it's very parameter or configuration driven with not a lot of coding, which really helps and lends itself to a service bureau and to onboarding new customers, and is why one of the reasons why Equins Worldline and Atos have adopted this solution for this offering. Also, I think a really key aspect of interbank traffic is the ability to monitor and track and trace where transactions and files have gone. And we have an excellent user interface that allows you to do that, to see where are my files, where are my transactions, where have they gone, and the full status and life cycle of what's happened once they've hit our solution and moved on from there. And that's also important because we have a message warehouse then, and the more traffic you pass through a solution like this, the better reporting and the better analytics you get from it. And we have reporting embedded as part of the solution as well. Again, which makes it a really easy to use, easy to visualize solution for managing your SWIFT. In addition, we have the normal things like manual message entry and repair, the ability to provide billing and statistics. And probably as I move into the next slide, I think the unique value of this solution, above and beyond its functional capabilities and its non-functional capabilities, is the ability to do multiple networks, not just SWIFT, but also to have the option of going to SIA or to EBIX, whether it's for another CSM option or to deal with something like the SIPs, for example. The capability to move between one CSM and another, the capability to provide to the bank to have different network options to connect to something. Also within that, I guess SIPs, for those of you not familiar with it, I'm going to have to say it because it's a bit of a tongue twister, but it's systematically important payment systems, and step 2 being one of those. So the ECB has directed that you should have the ability to connect multiple ways to step 2, not just one. So again, that's a unique value that this solution provides, which other products in the marketplace do not provide. And as well, we touched a lot on payments within this, but obviously those of you that are familiar with SWIFT and know SWIFT well and live with it, obviously understand that it's much beyond payments. All the other SWIFT business areas as well, whether it's securities, trade finance, and whatever, these are all covered as part of this platform as well. And within that, we have T2S as listed up here, Target 2 for securities. So the ability not just to do your payments, but all your financial interbank traffic on this one platform, and using either of the networks that are capable and sit on the platform, as well as some of the domestic networks we've listed up here as well, which can be used as well. So a single solution, a single window for all of your financial messaging is the key value proposition here. From a product point of view, from a services offering point of view, it allows you to outsource your SWIFT using this solution that we've put in place with our partners. So I think I'll hand back to Olaf now.
Yeah. So thank you, Dara. Thank you very much for this explanation. I will go to my last slide, doing a little bit of a conclusion. So in essence, it's really about one aspect to bring the compliance aspect, the security aspect to the bank, and to decrease all the efforts and associated costs with that. So this is definitely something what this solution and setup brings to banks added value. The second, what we talked about with the platform and also with the drivers we have seen so far. And by the way, Commerzbank was not with a legacy platform in place. Yeah, so those are other banks we are talking to. Not just that you have the assumption here that Commerzbank had a legacy platform. So the legacy platform replacement with a state-of-the-art solution, and this is a general statement. This is what the bank should look for and being prepared for the future, especially what Julius also outlined always is the real-time capability. Yeah. So, and we believe that with this setup here, with the platform and the solution setup here, the service setup is capable for that. And overall, we convinced that we can deliver here savings in a range of 20 to 35% of the current run costs. So how typically we engage with customers, because each customer on that scale is non-standard, of course. Yeah. So tier ones are specific ones. So for that reason, we start with a half-day workshop to understand mutually more in deep what the service is about, also understand bank's current environment, and then to have a as-is situation and the challenges mutually understood, and based on that we come then with a high-level estimation, timing, costing, and so on. So this is how it works in the engagement. And now going to the last slide. So this is the Q&A. But in 2 weeks' time, I also want to mention there are Cybers in Sydney going on for 4 days from the 22nd to 25th of October. We are present, so Equine Sportline is present here. Please feel free also to arrange meetings to come around. Intercope is present there. If you have any specific questions, we are very happy to have you on our booth and to discuss. So let's go to, we got a lot of questions in. Let's see if we can answer them all. But let's start here with the first question. How can you guarantee that your solution is really future proof? So I think that's a question to you, Julius, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Olaf. So yeah, that's a good question. Of course, how can you really guarantee that anything is going to be always future-proof? I think to answer this, I would suggest that it's really based on our approach. So we clearly invested very heavily now in this solution. We believe it's something that that differentiates us very strongly in the market. Not only offers customers a new solution that wasn't available before, but also really underpins some of our other core services. And so in that respect, we have the full intention of continuing to invest in this solution to make sure that we're always providing something with a strong value proposition and something which can be as future-proof as possible. I think the other answer to this question is in the approach that we take to ensuring current regulatory requirements or providing assurance. So we try as much as possible to look ahead of the curve, see what's coming, plan that in, make sure that we're ready, make sure that the investments are done on time, and wherever possible, if we can see other synergies, then we'll use it as an occasion to develop those synergies and to offer new services. So unlike perhaps other providers in the market, particularly around service bureaus, we continue to invest strongly in this. We believe it's something that we want to be in for the future, and I think that's really the main guarantee that we can provide. Okay.
Maybe that question here might be related to this as well. Does it comply with the SWIFT security requirements? I think that was already stated in the presentation, but maybe Julius, you can give an answer here again on this as well.
Sure. Yeah. The CSP, so Customer Security Program of SWIFT. It was launched last year in relation to different events and has had a major impact, of course, on the market and on SWIFT users. The answer is yes, we are compliant. It's an obligation to be compliant if you're in providing services like we are. It involves ongoing yearly audits, which really are very far-reaching, extremely stringent by SWIFT, and to give you an indication, we sort of estimate that this requires at least half an FTE, maybe more, of effort just for this one compliancy statement. From a customer sort of perspective, the CSP program is also, and we didn't touch on it, but it's maybe a moment to mention it now, of course. If you are a bank servicing corporates, then your requirements are even more stringent in the sense that your corporate connections are also under the guidance or under the remit of this program. So for a service bureau, this is bread and butter, but for banks, this can be quite a burden. Other areas really where we see a burden linked to CSP are essentially around the security training and the security requirements. Of course, it is a security program, so that's really where the emphasis is. So things like the vulnerability penetration tests and checks and maintenance, efficient patching, all of this requires a kind of industrialized approach to ensuring that security is really always at the forefront of your mind. It really, by being compliant, we're able to take away that pain from our customers as a Type B architecture also. This is from a customer perspective, from when they have to. So when our customers need to attest with SWIFT, this is actually the least burdensome attestation requirement too. So I think in that respect we tick a lot of boxes, but to answer the question, we most surely are compliant with CSP.
Okay. Then we have a question: what additional functionality or advantage can we get from such a setup? Functionality, maybe a question to both of you, but maybe giving it to Deborah here from a platform or solution from a software point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I guess aside from the costs and operational risk, etc., that was discussed earlier, I think I mentioned it or certainly touched on it. A single platform for all your files and messages on a central repository or warehouse, if you like. That's a very powerful thing because it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great opportunity for you to be able to, as a bank or as an institution, to be able to have better reporting and potentially run things like analytics against it, so that you have a much better insight into actually what's happening with your customers in terms of payments and the movement of transactions, interbank traffic. So I think that's definitely an additional functionality. Probably, the multi-tenant aspect of this setup as well, like we touched on earlier, on one central system, it allows us to it allows you to see, all of what's happening. And again, like we said earlier, with the multiple networks, you could have all of your interbank traffic in a single warehouse, and what that gives you in terms of visibility as a customer. Also, I think that this is, from our point of view as Intercope, anyway, I mean, this product is driven by our user community, and additional functionality and where we go is as much driven by the industry and what's happening in the industry with the likes of things like instant payments, for example, which we touched on earlier, but also feature functionality that customers want to see in the product. The users of the product, what they like to see, the types of reports, the types of information, and the types of actions that they can perform on here. While all the while being mindful of things like CSP, the SWIFT Customer Security Program, and what you are allowed to and not to. So I think for us, the advantage is from a performance point of view, from a functional point of view, and also this additional capability to have with multiple networks.
Okay. Julius, anything to add to this functionality point of view?
Sure. So, Dara's obviously mentioned all the functionality around Box, which is the core Swift messaging application at the heart of it. But around there, of course, you have other tools and services that you can deploy. Things like AML, or even I've seen some of the other questions that are coming in, for example, around blockchain. So you can imagine that this could become also a platform for future services, whether just in proof of concept or actually rolling them out to the market. So we really see this as a platform on which new services in and around SWIFT, around messaging, around transaction management will be deployed using the same sort of fundamentals of high availability, scalable, cost-effective, and of course in a fully managed service mode too. So the market is, I mentioned it before, really moving to real time, and we really feel this strongly within Equans Worldline, and we see it all the time, and this will also translate into the Swift world too. So we see this really as a platform for the future.
Okay, thank you, Julius. Then we have a question regarding the availability. So how can you assure the high availability of the service? I think, that's a question to you here to answer, Julius.
Yeah, I'm getting all the good questions. Okay, so we need to guarantee high availability as part of the CSP requirements, and it was part of the previous Service Bureau program too. So we've, as I mentioned earlier, we sort of used to running at that pace, at that level. Availability is set at 99.98%, and this is over multiple sites. And we basically do this through efficient database management, middleware clustering, also local high availability operations, so doubling of servers, interfaces, etc. The full replication of data and having the messaging application in an active mode, and of course load balancing. So sort of the classical technical ways of guaranteeing high availability. But behind that, of course, is the operating model too. So you can have all these things in place, but unless you're drilled to providing services at that level, then you can have the best technology set up in the world. Unless you have the processes that can handle it, you won't be able to achieve it. So we also put as much effort and importance on the processes behind it to make sure that we can deliver if and when needed. And of course, if anything ever does go seriously wrong, which is very, very unlikely, but of course you need to plan for these things, then we can switch to DR on a third data center where we basically guaranteed and test that and within a failover time frame of within 2 hours. So there's a lot of checks and balances, not just technology but also processes.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a question here regarding the network connectivity. Why would connectivity to networks other than SWIFT be needed? Maybe question to Dara here, just to mix it a little bit.
I guess if we look at the likes, if you take step 2, for example, in Europe with SEPA, so you have a number of connectivity options. You can go over via SwiftNet, you can use SIA, or you can use IBEX. So if you had the platform that's sending out your FileAct SEPA traffic, if it had the capability to do more than one network, well then you have a fault tolerance, a natural fault tolerance between being able to decide which network to use, just from a technical point of view. But also you might make sense from a product or a decision point of view. You might decide you want to use one network as opposed to another for multiple reasons. And in addition, it also gives you greater flexibility on the clearing and settlement mechanisms we see. With things like PSD2 in Europe and that, the landscape is changing quite a lot. New CSMs, things like instant payments, your ability to be able to connect to multiple networks, potentially multiple CSMs, even for the same scheme, is a very, very important thing. So having more than just SWIFT is obviously gives you that greater flexibility and agility on the one platform again as well, which is something I think we pressed earlier. In addition, I touched on systemically important payment systems as well. That this for step 2, your ability to be able to use multiple or have an alternative network, and again, this solution and the ability to use multiple networks provides you with that. Okay,
great. Then there's a question regarding how long does it take to onboard a bank to the service. Julius, maybe here to answer.
Sure. That's a tricky question. So it's kind of like how long is a piece of string? It really depends on the client's existing infrastructure, their requirements, complexity, etc. But it can be as short as 6 months. Whatever happens, we always start and work with a dedicated project team. This ensures that there's continuity and that we get really to the best result possible, based on a really in-depth analysis beforehand. But it can be fast. Complexity can add to time, but we're also confident that our middleware, our concentrator adapter, is really something that can speed processes up or speed onboarding up when we do have situations where there is significant amount of complexity in back offices that we need to interconnect to or from. And of course, having a sort of more generic solution also means that you can still move quickly. And as we build up the experience with larger banks, this will also add to the efficiency that we can deploy our solutions. Working with really very experienced people that not just are project managers, but also actually delivery managers, so they take ownership of the full end-to-end, not just during project phase, but afterwards, I think is also an important component, because doing something fast can be great, but it has to work and work seamlessly at the end, so it needs to be both. And that's kind of a hard combination to get right, but that's really the focus of where we think our part of our core value proposition is clearly based, and working also with the right partners that have the same mindset, the same focus on quality is also something which is critical in this environment too. I don't know, Dara, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think you've covered it there. I mean, I think the solution it lends itself to a fast onboarding time and to a migration plan based around what the customer might want to do, whether that be by BIC or by scheme. The solution lends itself to that. So yeah, I mean, I think 6 months is probably a fair estimate on a project timeline.
Yeah. So we are having remaining 3 minutes. So a lot of other questions. So one is, can you provide the service everywhere in the world? Yeah, Julius. I think.
Sure, we can. We provide services 24/7, but our main focus is Europe. But we have clients already outside of Europe. But sure, we can provide services outside. So yeah.
Then there was and you mentioned it already. I think in the future proven question there was blockchain mentioned. There was also a question regarding what's your view on blockchain in the financial messaging business. So of course there are activities of Ripple and so on to do some proof of concepts with banks together. We have a dedicated blockchain group here at Equens, Worldline and Atos jointly together. We definitely look into the technologies. We get into the technology. We look also how we can get value out of that. Also with a link into the financial messaging, of course. My personal opinion here, I'm also part of this scientific community here at Atos, very small group and thought leadership, is that it always needs the critical mass of participants. And this is the challenge. It's not a technology question here. If blockchain can replace the current existing way of transferring messages, it's about the critical mass. So this is the answer here from my side. So all other questions, sorry that we cannot answer them here now. We are close to the end. We will definitely get back to you and give you some answers, maybe on some not like where our data centers are located. Those are questions we definitely will not answer, but they are in Europe and certified, bank certified, I can say. But other questions we will get back to you and answer. So thank you very much for listening to this webinar. Also, thank you very much to you, Dara, from Intercope, our strategic partner here in the next generation financial messaging. Thank you also to you, Julius, heading this important piece here in our value proposition. And last but not least, thank you to Finovate for facilitating this webinar. Yeah, hope we see us or some of you at Cyprus, both D60 in 2 weeks' time. So would be happy to have face-to-face with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.